Hi, I'm Will.
And I'm Luke.
And this is Will and Luke Discuss,
a vodcast
and podcast
where we discuss content related to psychology,
personal growth,
self-development,
and well-being. This episode, we're discussing
Nonviolent Communication by Marshall Rosenberg.
Nice. And we were just talking before this started about how you came across this and the different content types you've consumed in regards to this. I wonder if you could just tell everyone a bit about that.
Yeah, so he predominantly let's start with what it is. So it's two things really. This nonviolent communication is a strategy of communicating, but that's at the more, I'd say, superficial or shallow level. And actually, when you watch videos on Marshall Rosenberg being asked what it is, he actually struggles to answer the question. So I don't mind if I struggle as well. But more fundamentally, it's a philosophy of thinking and almost an intention with which to be with people, such that we're not judging, we're not demonizing, we're not labeling people as good or bad, we're not labeling ourselves as good or bad or right or wrong. We're not thinking people are deserving of punishment or praise or reward, but we're trying just to connect with the inherent feelings and needs inside one another to contribute to well-being generally. That can be my first start of what it is.
No, great. I think just to expand on that, he says it's about, connecting willingly in a way that makes natural giving possible. He kind of goes back to that, and, to expand a bit on what he said before, it's about connecting with what's alive in the other person when you're communicating with them. And I think it comes off the back of him saying that the normal ways of communicating, which he refers to as jackal language, do have, moralistic judgments, are right, wrong, good, bad, and also denying responsibility as well. Denying responsibility for what we do. And I guess he suggests a language of the heart, which he refers to as giraffe language, and because they've got the biggest heart or something. I think that's
biggest heart of any land mammal.
Yeah, love it. And I guess in that language, he's referring to, it's a language of choice. It's a language that gives from the heart. It's basically around connecting with others' needs and hearing the feelings inside of them as well, as opposed to the language that we've been brought up with in our culture, seeing an enemy image in other people. We're judging people rather than observing them, and not connecting to the reality that's within inside people.
And I want to reiterate that we'll probably talk a lot about the strategy of communication, like what words to use to describe things, how to negotiate conflict, that sort of thing. But more fundamentally, it's a state of mind where we're seeing, where our aim is just to contribute to well-being, like you say, contribute to the natural giving we feel when our needs are met. And so, we're just trying to meet our own needs and help other people and enjoy helping other people meet theirs. So there's no obligation or duty or punishment or name calling. It's just no one's right or wrong, no moralistic judgments. We're just aiming to contribute to well-being through meeting one another's needs.
And not doing anything out of guilt either. Or I think it does expand a little bit on what you were saying in last week's podcast around, making sure that, the stuff you were saying around, if we're all worrying about other people's needs, no one ends up being happy.
Yeah.
So, as much as this is about, connecting with other people's needs and feelings, it's also about, how we talk to ourselves and sort of attitude we have towards ourselves. I was interested, just before I kind of jumped online, I Googled Marshall Rosenberg and just had a look about what he's about. And so I didn't realize he's gone to foreign countries and done peace talks and peace negotiations between tribes in Africa or like Israel and Palestine. And he seems like a real humanitarian who's looking to, who does all this for the greater good of humanity. So, as you say, as much as we're going to focus on strategies, I think there is an element of love and humanity that goes throughout his work, and he's a very sensitive, honest, and brave communicator.
Yeah,
I thoroughly enjoyed this. Yeah,
he's gone into the heart of like throughout, like during like the post-Rwandan genocide, he was there mediating people through like Kosovo and Serbia, Israel, Palestine. Like he's properly got really lived what he was preaching, and he would go around giving workshops, not get paid, and then sleep on the street because he couldn't afford a hotel. Like it was a real maverick. He really like lived by his values and was certainly just doing it because he believed in it.
He'd always not always, but a number of times he talked about just people rocking up at his house.
Yeah, in the middle of the night.
So I just met this woman in the middle of the night and just spoke to her through this communication. Because her mum came to a workshop recently, so she told the daughter where I lived, and so he's I was very touched by this. I was really grateful you sent it over. It wasn't long into one of the workshops of his that I've been watching that I realised that I was onto a really good thing here, and it's definitely inspired some ways of thinking and made me be, critical in a positive sense of some of the language I use and my communication style with other people, particularly in regards to listening and the language I use. I found it incredibly inspiring. I was very grateful you sent this over to me, and I've been really looking forward to chatting about it.
Oh, good. I'm really pleased it's been valuable to you because, I think I said with Getting Things Done that was a book I would stick in my Bible if I was going to construct one. And nonviolent communication would definitely be the communication part of my Bible. I think this is... I can't imagine how anyone couldn't find this valuable. It's so... there are many, because you and I have read a lot of books in psychotherapy and psychology and stuff, and there are often many, like, there will always be a chapter on communication at some point. But none of what I've read has come close to the like how much this makes sense and resonates with me, and how helpful I found it. Yeah. So I'm really pleased you enjoyed it.
Yeah, and there's, the bit that stands out to me in particular, to get into it is really around the, connecting with other people's feelings and needs when you're talking to them. And expressing that in yourself as well. He often refers, don't worry about what people are thinking, like connect with them, like build the connection before you start coming up with solutions or start trying to fix problems or anything like that. And that's something I know personally I've tended to do, is often try and jump to solutions or always think about where the conversation's going rather than maybe intuitively like learning to sense what is going on in the other person when talking to them.
Yeah, he says that he believes most 6-year-olds could solve the majority of conflicts if you just told them what the problem was and what each of the parties' needs were. It's like that's not the difficult part. Like this fixing of the problem is usually the easy part if the two parties have understood one another's feelings and needs, then a conflict can usually resolve itself quite easily in terms of the logistics of it.
I'd be interested to start out by talking about the sort of communication that he's suggesting we move away from. I think that'd be a good place to start before we move into some strategies. I guess in particular, the bit I would bring up is around how we cast judgments on people in the way we talk, and we often use language that implies things are good or bad, and wrong or right, and we put a lot of moralistic judgments on things. I'm wondering whether there's an idea in your head you could just share with me about what language he's talking about that isn't good for humanity and isn't good for us as people to connect.
Yeah, so you've already mentioned perhaps a bit of language we can use to go forward with this is he calls the common way we've all been, at least in most Western cultures, been educated to think. He calls jackal, and it's basically just a sort of joke he uses with puppets to help teach this in workshops, because this was all mainly workshop based before he wrote any books on it or anything. So it's much more it started much more interactively, let's say, than perhaps a lot of the other content we've consumed for this podcast. So yeah, this jackal language, like you say, a big part of it is judging the other person as sort of moralistically right or wrong. And I know one idea he's talks about is we often use the word like too, as in like too much of something. You're doing this too much. This person's to this or to that. And underneath that implies that for one, there is a right amount of something, and that verging from that right amount is wrong, and that you know how much that right amount is. So that's one idea that stood out for me.
You're kind of implying that you're the best person to make that decision about whether something's right or wrong. Yeah, certainly encourages us to be open when we actually look at the language we use. I think language. Think about, he talks about how, even in school, people saying, you did really good there, or you look good, or you're fantastic. It's kind of implying that if you didn't do what you did, you're not fantastic.
And it's labeling someone quite statically, and it's to jump ahead a bit, it's fundamentally missing the point of what's actually happened. Usually, if I were to say, Will, you're fantastic, what's probably actually happened in that interaction is you've done something that that has aided a need of mine, such that I've responded with a positive emotion. And then I've turned that into a label and given it to you. And what he's saying is, there's no need to turn it into a label. Just share the feelings and needs. It's like, oh, Will, when you did that, I felt really pleased because it helped meet my need for this. I don't need to turn you into some sort of concept and label you as fantastic statically in that moment.
And traction builds if you start to people only start to do things because they're seen as being good, as opposed to voluntarily from the heart, naturally giving to the other person out of pure enjoyment, not because they're going to be told they're good or told they did well. And I think what he's saying is, if everyone communicates like this, then there's a lot more natural sense of giving amongst people, as opposed to there being conditions on why we do things. It becomes kind of like it becomes a demand instead of a request for someone to meet my needs or me to meet their needs.
That it's actually a natural human need of ours to contribute to one another, to contribute to life and to society and to people, and that it feels good when we voluntarily do something that makes someone else's life more wonderful and improves their well-being. That feels great, and everyone knows. I'm sure the vast majority of people listening to this can agree that there have been times in their life where they've chosen to do something for someone. They've seen the joy it's brought them, and it feels really good. So he's saying that's a natural part of being human, but that when we get into coercion and punishment and demands, another need of ours is autonomy and freedom. And if we feel like we're doing something out of obligation or duty or guilt, then everyone pays for it.
What are your thoughts on him using the word violence? It's a very strong word, isn't it? Kind of saying non-violent communication. I think. Yeah. I guess just to say my thoughts on it is, I think it's an interesting way of really highlighting how this language does have a negative impact on that natural giving.
Yeah.
It's I don't think you could use another word to describe it. And it's amazing how ingrained in culture it is between people. Sorry, I did ask a question, but I'll just keep going. On the back of what we were just saying earlier, I found recently that I become frustrated at feedback I get that isn't connected to my feelings or needs. So often, or there's been times at work where maybe I'm told by someone that I'm doing a fantastic job and I'm doing really, really well, but I don't feel like they actually know how I'm traveling in that job. Like, actually, I've had a pretty rough couple of weeks. I found it really difficult to, connect with clients, or maybe I don't feel like personally I'm doing my best work. And I don't feel like that's been seen. Whereas with times where I feel like I'm doing well and I'm connecting and I'm bringing my best to work, it doesn't necessarily get noticed in that way. And I'm finding that interesting, talking to people, that if I'm reflected like inaccurately, it can become quite frustrating. And
So you're touching on a really important human need to feel empathically connected to experience being understood and experience someone accurately seeing what's alive in you, and that even if they're saying something which on the surface might be considered nice or praiseworthy or something, if it's not actually resonant with what you're feeling, then it just feels frustratingly disconnected, rather than like the boost they might trying to be giving you by saying you're doing really well.
You make an interesting point. Like he says that speaking in this nonviolent communication isn't nice. It's not meant to be like a nice language. It's a language of connection. It's a language of giving. It's a way of communicating that's open. And that's it comes on to the bit where he's saying that we don't communicate effectively enough in this way. Do we? We don't like. Often people don't use this form of communication. They often give compliments, or they do things out of feeling like they're doing the right thing. And he says the worst kind of person is someone who says yes or agrees, who doesn't mean it. I think, just to link that back to what I'm saying, saying something just for the sake of being nice, as opposed to saying what's real within you, what's connecting to your life force and what's alive inside you.
So it might be so you reference then the yes saying jackals. He refers to it. So like he says never do anything for someone else that you can't do with the joy of a small child feeding a hungry duckling. Like nice. He talks about giving with like a Santa Claus attitude. And if you're not coming from that place, if you feel coerced or obligated, or like that you're doing it out of a sense of, I will feel guilty if I don't do this, then he says to really stop and pause, because that's actually, although we might consider it in our culture nice to I guess what we might think of sacrificing ourselves to give to someone else. So let me put it this way. I care about you, so I wouldn't want you to like diminish your needs and your well-being for me, because that wouldn't, and if I knew that was happening, I wouldn't feel good about what you were offering. And then if you hide that on top, so if you pretend that you're not actually sacrificing your well-being and you're doing things for me, then we're just not connected as two human beings. We're not in touch with what's resonant in one another. And that's much more important to me than, say, other people doing things for me that they think I might benefit from, that sacrifices themselves.
Well, he says, just to quote him here, he says, we give power to others by worrying about how they're going to respond. By putting our sense of safety in other people's reactions, we're submitting, or we're retreating. We can't connect, we can't respond. in an empathic and kind way. It's that stood out to me a lot. About what power do we give to other people through our communication?
Yeah.
And the bit I remember us talking about before doing this podcast, maybe it was a week or two ago, we were speaking about, the bit around, we don't do anything we don't choose to do.
Yes.
And I imagine, there are some limits to this, but no, I find that quite a liberating thing.
Just on that, just to pause on that, I'm always certain Marshall Rosenberg would say there aren't limits to that you never do anything you don't choose to do. Because I say that because he gave the example of someone in his workshop saying,
yes, I know you're going to go. Yeah.
Like, I got stopped in the street the other day and someone put a gun to my head and said, like, give me your wallet or your life. And he was like, so what did you choose to do? And it's like, he says, it seems like you had a pretty clear choice to me. And he's like, he's like, what did you choose to do? He's like, well, I chose not to give him my wallet. And he's like, oh, that's interesting. Either he was a very poor shot or there was some alternative way that got resolved. And so, yeah, although we might not always like the choices we have, we do always have a choice, and it's important not to give your power away by denying your own responsibility or your ability to choose your responses.
Yeah, I think I found this bit in just this concept in general. Just it's quite liberating. I don't have to go to work tomorrow. Like I don't have to do anything, but I know the consequences. I know what will happen, but it's an interesting way to carry yourself in life, knowing that you don't have to do anything. You gave an example of a mother, didn't he? Who says, but there are some things you just simply have to do. I have to go home and cook for my kids. Every night of the week. And he said, try communicating your feelings and needs to your kids. And she goes, I hate cooking. I don't want to do this. And then the kids were like, thank fuck. Yeah. we don't like your cooking. Yeah.
Well, I think he said, Marshall spoke to the son like the next week or something. He was like, oh, I'm really interested in what's going on in your family. It's like, yeah, well, mum came home after the workshop and announced to us all that she was no longer going to cook. And he was like, oh, what was your reaction to that? And he said, well, Marshall, I said, thank God. He was like, why did you say that? He was like, because now I don't have to listen to her complain about cooking every night.
Yeah, nice. It's an interesting. Is there anything else you kind of wanted to say about that at all? Because I know it's something we paused on a few times.
About what specifically?
Just around like our sense of choice. How that relates to communication. Is I suppose, it does relate a bit to, not doing anything you don't want to do. And you do have choice in all situations. And I suppose the skill is in learning to communicate that.
Yeah, I think I do want to say more, but I want to take a step back by prefacing it with Marshall Rosenberg was Jewish and grew up during the civil rights movement. So like, what he was passionate about and what he saw when he was younger is how some people can be extremely violent to people just based on the color of their skin, or he talked about being called names at school and being beaten up for being Jewish and stuff, and how some people, even under what seem like similar conditions, can maintain their compassion and not get sucked into that enemy imagery and that violence. So, and this aspect of recognizing your capacity for choice and responsibility and not denying your responsibility, he talked about with reference to Nazi Germany, and that I think it was the during like the trial of Adolf Eichmann, who was one of the Nazi high up people. He talked about how it was easy to send people to their death because they had ways of denying choice and responsibility. It's like, oh, I have to do it. It's superior's orders. Like, I don't have any choice but to do this. So that was a way in which people can be violent and not feel the emotional consequences of it. So he really emphasizes that denying responsibility can lead us to contribute to suffering in the world, because it's easy to do things that hurt other people if we feel like we're not responsible for the choices we make.
I'd be interested to talk about nonviolent communication with other people, particularly in conflicts, or having disagreements with people, or needing to express your needs or to get something from somebody else, like you're needing somebody else in that moment. So I guess just to start with, there's a bit around, if you're frustrated at a situation or another person, the stimulus is the person, but the cause of our suffering is our thinking.
Yeah.
And he's saying that when we have, feelings of, there's four, isn't there? There's anger, guilt, depression, and shame. That's an indication that there's a distorted impression of our needs. So when we're feeling those things, when we're getting angry or irritable at a situation, that's just a distortion of our needs. And what we need to do is connect with our needs and express those to the other person. The way he says to do that is to use this language of action, which is tell the other person what you're seeing, a concrete observation of what you're seeing, communicate the feeling that you're having, and then communicate the need that you're having. So I'm sure there's a lot more to say on this, but that's the process he goes through. So when you're wanting to communicate with someone else, what's going on for you, instead of being like, you're being annoying or you need to do this for me, it's more about, okay, what is the other person exactly doing? And I think that's a hard thing for people to do. Yeah. Often it's difficult, isn't it, to pinpoint exactly what the other person's doing if you're annoyed with them. Like whether it's doing the dishes, like, they never tidy up. It's like, okay, what do they actually do? Do they just leave it once a week? Do they leave 2 dishes? Like really pinpoint that. Maybe I'll get you to just talk a bit through that process.
Yeah, definitely.
How you found that? Yeah.
So we've talked about the jackal language, or talked about a few aspects of it, and this is how to speak in giraffe, as he calls it. So giraffe is nonviolent communication, and like you pointed out, there are 4 aspects to this language. There's making observations, and we'll go into, and as you pointed out, making them without judgments, which is actually very difficult to do. Just clean, clear observations of facts of the matter without throwing judgments in. And then sharing your feelings about those observations.
Leaving them out of it as well. You've got to leave them out of that feeling. Not like
leave the other person, you mean?
Leave the other person out. So it's not like you make me feel. It's, I am feeling frustration. I am feeling guilt, sadness, anger.
No one makes us feel anything. Yeah.
Can't attribute that to them. No.
Yeah. So just sharing the pure feeling, like you say, without attributing its cause to the other person, or just things generally. And then he says that our feelings are indicators of needs being met or unmet. And feelings or emotions we have which we experience as pleasant are a signal our body's giving us that a need of ours is being met. And feelings or emotions we have that we consider to be unpleasant, so sadness, anger, guilt, shame, pain, hurt, these are indications that our needs are going unmet. So we share the need underneath the feeling as well. And then finally, if we are in some sort of conflict resolution, we might also want to share a request we have of the other person, for them a suggestion, which an offer for them, a way in which we believe they might be able to help us meet our need if they want to, if they're willing to.
Making sure that's not a demand based on that jackal language you talked about, kind of coercion or manipulation or control. It's a simple request, not going, now, because of all these things, you must do this to make me feel better, And, and also, I guess, to add to this, the bit that stood out for me was that, people don't know our needs unless we communicate them. And I think that's something that's probably taken me quite a long time to realize. If you've got a bit of a judgmental attitude, or you're feeling that frustration, there's almost this expectation that the other person should know why you're feeling the way you're feeling.
Right.
But actually, it's your responsibility to communicate that and make yourself clear. Yeah. And then, I guess, after that point, if the person maybe responds in a certain way, or they aren't able to meet your request, then you've got a choice to make from there, whether to seek another person to support your needs, or whether that's a relationship you want to continue, or a conversation you want to continue. That's one of my reflections from this, and I think it's something that I find difficult to do when you're caught up in the frustration of a situation. To really slow down and break it down and communicate to the other person, especially if this isn't their way of communicating either. They don't hear it like this.
Yes. Yeah, that is a good point. He tries to make it clear that it needn't be the case that the other person must also know this nonviolent communication to be able to interact with them. We can still, so although we just shared the 4 aspects then of what we express when something's going on for us, we can also listen for those 4 aspects in the other, whatever they're saying to us. So let's say, you call me a dickhead. I can try to listen beneath that criticism to what's actually alive in you. So are you feeling angry or hurt, and I can just take a stab at it. I can make a guess to try to empathize with the feelings and needs underneath your enemy imagery of me in that moment, which obviously, like you say, is very difficult if someone's calling you names.
Well, I think he says as well, as difficult as it is to speak in this way, there's 2 things. One, he says anything worth doing is worth doing poorly. Yeah. So any attempts at this way of communicating with someone, or hearing someone like that, is whatever you can do to connect with those needs and feelings is progress. That's a really hard thing to do, and I'm forgetting what my part 2 was as well. But maybe it'll come back to me. Come back to me.
Yeah, and we were talking about the difficulty of communicating this way, particularly when the other person is communicating in jackal.
Yeah, hearing it like that. Something to add on to that as well is it's when we're doing requests, we've got to ask for something that we do want, not something that we don't want. It's like a dead man's request or something. That was,
I just thought of that. That's from acceptance and commitment therapy. A dead person's goal, which it sounds similar, doesn't it? So a dead person's goal in acceptance and commitment therapy is a goal that a dead person could do, like quit smoking, or rather to not smoke, or to not drink. A dead person could do that. So we want to set our goals actively. But also in non-violent communication, it helps the other person if we can share our requests with something we want them to do actively, rather than what we don't want them to do.
Being specific as well.
Yeah. So he gives a silly example of he's trying to mediate this school problem where this particular school are getting a lot of broken windows from students smashing them, and so he walks into the meeting there. He's like, "So what's the problem that we're trying to resolve today?" And they're saying, "Oh, we're trying to we want the students to stop smashing windows." And he's like, okay, kill them.
Yeah.
They're like, what? Yeah, he's like, well, dead children smash no windows. and it's obviously a joke, but it's trying to make the point that saying what we don't want isn't asking for what we do want.
And he talks as well about, when we're responding to other people's requests, not saying no, but saying what stops you from saying yes.
Yeah.
And I think that's something I found is like, it can be really difficult to say no to things, to get requests from other people. So actually being very clear on your reason, like getting in touch with yourself, like, why am I feeling some resistance to wanting to do this thing for this person or at this job? Like, why is it that I'm kind of warming up to this sense of irritability that I shouldn't have to do what's been requested of me?
Yeah.
Like, right, what is it exactly that stopped me from saying, do I need to be doing something else? Like, I'm feeling anxious at the moment because I have a need to complete this other bit of work, or I need to talk to this other person, and I don't believe I've got time for this now. Is there a way we can find another solution to meet your need for this to get done, as well as keep meeting my needs?
Yeah, definitely. And it's so interesting, since I've learned about nonviolent communication, how often I now pick up on how frequently people say they can't do things, and it's a real denial of responsibility. It's like,
right example.
Do you want to meet at 9 o'clock? Oh, I can't. And it's like, well, you could. So, like, I know it might be kind of nitpicky, but it's interesting that that's so embedded in our language that people find it so difficult to say, like, I'm not willing to, because it feels to take that responsibility and say, I'm not willing to do that because I have another commitment at that time, and I'd prefer to prioritize that. It feels, there's a sense in the culture in which somehow that sounds mean, and it's nice to deny your responsibility, because if you can't do something, then it's not my fault, I can't. But like, it's to me, I would prefer to redefine nice as someone saying, I'm not willing to do that. Yeah, exactly. Well, it goes back to the Sam Harris book we did on lying. Like, I think it's much nicer, in my definition of the word nice, for someone to be truly honest with me, even if they think that that's at risk of me responding with some sort of negative emotion to that, because that's my responsibility.
Yeah. So, something is almost makes me quite sad thinking about it, is how little people communicate like that.
Yeah,
there's I mean, maybe I clocked onto this a little earlier than I read all this content. I watched it, but like, people don't communicate like that. People are flaky. People cancel things. People don't. It's just like, what world are we living in that we just feel like we have to kind of deny responsibility or even lie about things we don't want to do? But I guess the difficult, if you get invited to a party that you don't want to go to, like, how would you communicate? I have a need to only go to parties where I feel comfortable and I like the people there. Or do you, I suppose, what he says as well. So this was my second point is, there we go. It comes eventually. Is that we need to find our own language for this. It's not, some of the examples he gives, I think he knows he's doing this, saying, I feel like this and I have the need for this. Like, in some circumstances that can feel a bit robotic and it's got no teeth. Yeah. It's kind of a bit soft, but everyone's got their own way of talking, their own dialects, their own way of communicating. So whether it involves, I don't know, use of humor or certain words in the dictionary, I think that's something as well, like having that flexibility, but at the core of it is communicating why exactly why you can't say yes to something, instead of just using all these negative words like can't, won't, shouldn't, don't, bad, good. Yeah,
I'm pleased you raised that point about perhaps the sterility of using it as a formula, this language, because to say, to only speak like I feel this because my need for this is being met or unmet. Would or when I saw this, when I observed this, I felt this because I need this. Would you X? Like, obviously, that's a very strict formula, and like you say, that is one of the criticisms of nonviolent communication. But as Marshall points out, that's a way of teaching it as an ABC, because we're so ingrained in a domination, moralistic judgment culture and not speaking from the feelings that are alive in us, then it will be kind of clunky when we start off. It's like learning scales on the guitar. Like, scales aren't music yet, but you need to kind of ingrain that to build up your repertoire before you can improvise. And as I tried to highlight at the beginning, it's not about the actual words you use, but it's about the intent and energy with which you communicate with people.
I think that leads on really nicely to something I wanted to speak about around nonviolent communication and empathy. So particularly when we're like listening to other people, and he says that there's three components of this when we're talking to other people. It's our full presence when we're with someone. Like, if we're going to be responding to what's most alive in that person at that moment, we need to be there with them.
Yeah.
Like sitting in that space. And I think that's something, I'll quickly say the other two actually. So it's full presence, not giving advice and not saying, I understand, just responding to those needs and those feelings. And I think that's something I'm constantly trying to improve at work in particular, and in relationships, like really being able to sit with someone and be with them rather than trying to jump to the solution. Like, be there, demonstrate some understanding, but not necessarily responding to what people think, but just listening to the needs. And I guess he says from this, from first connecting before finding solutions, you'll naturally get a sense and the solutions will appear. And I think to me, something that maybe he didn't say was like, it requires a lot of patience. And I don't have that patience. I think I like to move things quickly. I like to solve problems, especially if there's a conflict or I don't understand something. And this has forced me to really slow down a bit and just allow solutions to emerge. Like the connection is more important than the solution initially, anyway, to me.
Yeah. My guess would be, because I can relate to that as well. My guess would be that it's because our culture, it's very scared of negative emotion, and we're kind of raised. He points out that in, I think, 20 years of American education, no one ever asked him how he felt. And I can definitely relate to that so rare would it be that, like, people must say things like, how are you? And that they don't necessarily mean it, but there's a general understanding that it's not polite or it's uncomfortable to share negative emotions. And I think we kind of learn that that's supposed to be uncomfortable, and that therefore when we hear others talking about negative emotions, there's this sort of implicit assumption that there's some pressure for us to solve the problem, and that it's now our responsibility, and that there's some sense of discomfort just in being around it. That somehow we have to feel bad if someone else feels bad, and we can't just sit with that and be okay that they're not okay in this moment.
He says that we need empathy before we sympathize. We need to actually be able to understand what someone's going through and respond to those feelings, like demonstrate that understanding before we give lip service to, like, oh, I'll be all right, it's okay, you'll be all right. Like, it's amazing. That's something as well I realized through conversation I get frustrated to, is when you've expressed yourself and you've maybe expressed something that was very difficult to say or quite vulnerable, but then you feel like you're getting a generic oh, you'll be all right, oh, it'll pass, in a couple of weeks you'll feel better, or just keep trying, do what you can. Like, it jumps over the feeling and the need, and that's something I'm really in recognizing it in myself. I see how other people would need that too, not just jumping to a solution. It's like, I don't need a solution right now. I just need to be heard.
So what you really need in that moment is evidence that the other person's understood your feelings and needs and can demonstrate to you that they have seen what and felt what you've expressed.
And to add to that, he talks about the frustrations of people analyzing you as well, or you trying to analyze the other person, like trying to figure out what's going on, what's happening here, as opposed to just start that being the starting place.
That's almost it almost is irrelevant then. It's trying to understand the why before understanding the what. Just start with what's happening. What are you feeling? Doesn't matter why you're feeling that way. Let's just start with really both being on the same page of that. Then we can move on from there.
It requires time, doesn't it? As I said, time and patience to actually sit and listen and be with someone and not want to be somewhere else. And I think, modern day just maybe makes our conversations a lot shorter, or we can't express ourselves at length anymore. I imagine, back in the day, people spoke for longer for some reason. I don't know why. I just feel like
we are now a fast-paced society. Yeah.
No, please go. Yeah.
I think we've done quite a good job, fairly representative in the time we've had so far to kind of cover the background of this, what jackal is, what nonviolent communication is.
I agree.
Maybe would be beneficial for both of us and anyone who was watching or listening to this for us to bring in some real examples.
Absolutely,
and, it might be rather courageous of us if we were to discuss examples between us. We've been friends a long time, and I'm sure there have been disagreements or conflicts we've had, and maybe we could churn one of them through a nonviolent communication framework.
I think something that's coming to mind is I don't know where this comes. I've had a problem that's needed solving, and I've felt frustration at you for not either taking my side or offering advice, giving me a solution. And I think that's kind of the reverse of what we were just talking about now, as the one communicating the issue, not necessarily the one listening to the issue. I guess I have certain needs to be agreed with, or I have needs for you to provide solutions to my problems. And I think I felt some frustration when that hasn't been offered.
Yeah.
And I guess I'm wondering, even just saying that to you now feels a lot more constructive than probably how I was talking to you about it at the time.
Yeah.
I remember being like, come on, mate, like, just tell me honestly, like, what do you think? And that was pretty much me just going like, tell me you agree with me, or I'll be upset. So is that a good example? You think you could maybe
it sounds it depends. So I guess it's not so relevant to go into the specific of what you wanted me to agree with. But so there was that, but let's say that there was a specific time where perhaps you were telling me about a problem you were having, and your observation was that what I said wasn't agreeing with your analysis of the situation, and you felt frustrated in response to that. You wanted agreement from me. What need do you think it would have met for you if I had agreed with you with what you were saying?
The need for, I guess, validation that my point of view was okay to have. Like, I was okay to have the frustration that I'm not the only one who thinks this way. Like, I'm not. My thinking isn't extraordinary. It's kind of it'd be normal for me to feel this way, given the situation. I remember you saying like, I don't give advice. And I was like,
So it was frustrating when I said I'm not going to give you advice. That was frustrating to hear.
I guess that was like clear language, which kind of set in stone that I'm not going to get what I want from this conversation.
But it's he talks about there are many strategies or preferences we might have for a need to get met, but in actual fact there are usually many other alternative ways in which that need can get met. So it sounds like in that moment you were feeling frustrated because you wanted, obviously you had this need to be validated, and a sort of perhaps common feeling part of a common humanity, that the way you were seeing the situation was fine. Like there was nothing wrong with the way you were seeing things. It was it was okay, and
normal.
Yeah, and that had I have said I also see the situation the same way and I think you're right, that would have helped that need for you to feel validated to have been met.
But then it probably would have skipped out on another need to see reality as it is. But there can be multiple needs going on at once, right? I think he talks about that as well. He says, sometimes in meeting one need, you might not meet another.
Right. Yeah.
But yeah, I guess.
So what would? Yeah. So I assume then in that moment, a request. What would have been a request you either did or could have made to me for that? Then.
I mean, it's hard, isn't it? When I guess if you feel like the need, even when the need gets met, you're still going to kind of have that uncertainty. Right. I wonder, like, because even if you did fully agree with me, it's like, did it really meet that need? And I suppose, I guess in terms of your question, what was it like? What's the specific request?
I think you actually did, if I remember the situation rightly. I think you in fairness to your communication skills, you said, I want you to agree with me, and so
I need to hear you agree.
Yeah,
to feel settled. Yeah.
And I think so. Yeah, that was a request. I think then that goes. I guess now we can turn it on me if you're happy to. Of what?
Please, no. I think it's a good example actually. Yeah, it wasn't that long.
So
ago,
in that moment, you were talking about a person I didn't know in a situation I hadn't seen. So I knew it would have been not honest of me to say, yes, I think you're right, because I was genuinely unsure. I couldn't have been known if you were right or not, because I was miles away and didn't know the person or the situation or anything.
And you're only getting one side of the story as well.
Right. And I could...
full picture.
But I could also sense your frustration and... and I heard what you said, that you wanted me to agree with you. So I guess I was feeling conflicted. It's not a feeling. Maybe somewhat anxious that I had these two conflicting desires. One to ease the frustration of my friend, and the other for my own personal integrity, to be sort of honest. So.
And if you did agree with me, you wouldn't be giving out of a place of what would you say? Like, you wouldn't be willingly giving.
No.
You wouldn't be doing natural giving. It'd be more, in a way, out of coercion. Submission or coercion by me. Like, it's almost like the more frustration I felt I could show you, the more likely you were to agree.
Right.
Which sounds quite controlling, doesn't it?
Right.
Carry on. Yeah.
So in terms of expressing the feelings and needs that are stopping me saying no, I might have said something like, so you're feeling frustrated because you have a need for validation and
reassurance.
Yeah, reassurance, and a sense of kind of common humanity, right? That you're not some alien who thinks this way, but this is a perfectly natural way to think. However, not however. I guess I'm hearing that, and I'm hearing your request for me to agree with you. I'm feeling anxious because I have a need for, I guess, integrity and honesty, and I believe if I agree with you, I will be sacrificing that need. But I also want to help your need for validation. So then, what's my request? Is there something else I could do for you which would help your need for validation without having to agree with your analysis of this situation? Something like that, maybe. I don't know how that would come across.
Yeah, that's a good style. I guess it's offering an alternative solution, or not even a solution. It's just another way of thinking. I think it's hard to maybe play out what would have emerged from that, given the current emotions of the situation and the communication. But I think it's a good example. Of how could have worked through that, because we both got conflicting needs in a way, and then it's obviously masked quite a lot by a level of emotion and frustration, which were masking my true need in a way. It was kind of, there's probably a need beneath that original need as well. But yeah, it's interesting, like hearing now, like what feelings that you were connecting with at that time. So I don't think we spoke in that language. I wasn't.
No.
You probably observed some frustration, but you maybe didn't hear from me, allowing you therefore to sense it, like the true like turmoil and angst I was feeling about this level of indecision, this level of frustration.
Right.
And then I because I hadn't heard it from you, your anxiety around, honesty and wanting to support me.
Yeah.
Because I didn't hear that.
Yeah.
I wasn't, it's like I kept giving you a hard time. Like, had I known how anxious you were feeling around your conflicting needs, I may have softened and we may have connected a bit more, and there may have been some relief and solutions could have emerged. Right. Whereas it was kind of like we're both feeling these two things separately, but we're not telling each other. We're both focused on the issue and the solution.
Yeah,
there's no middle part, right?
We're talking about the thoughts we're having rather than the feelings we were having. So like you say, the level of turmoil and frustration you're feeling didn't necessarily come out your mouth, and the level of conflict and anxiety I was feeling probably didn't come out of my mouth. We were just talking about, like, you wanting me to agree with you, me saying I don't think I can because I don't necessarily agree with you, and just both sort of not being connected at the feelings level.
And it was hard. It was over the phone, and there was like a time pressure as well. I remember I was about to go to a massage, which is the single worst thing I could have done afterwards. Like, just lie there, just thinking about how you don't agree with me for an hour and a half, pretending to enjoy a massage. I thought that was great. I think that was a good example to go through.
And even though I had felt that that situation had passed, and it was no longer, I don't know, relevant to our present lives, I still feel somewhat more connected to you and relieved, even though we just discussed it as an example here.
I definitely, it's kind of nice to talk about it. I think it's also coming from a place of, hey, let's talk about what was going on for us at that point in time. There's no me versus you. I don't think it's, given our level of friendship, it's very rarely me versus you, but it's often, that's probably the most conflicting situation I've had with you in recent times. One where I've felt frustration, and you're part of that, which is quite rare. And I don't like to feel it, but I feel quite, that was nice. It was nice to hear what you were going through. I can actually fully understand it a bit more, and understand how could I expect you to just agree with me or provide solutions like that? Wouldn't have actually been helpful.
That's interesting that you're, on hindsight, I appreciate that as well. Actually, just as you say that I don't know, it feels somewhat comforting to know that it's comforted you to heal my feelings. And I'm wondering how you know now that had I have agreed with you or given you a solution, it seems like you're aware that wouldn't have met your need or wouldn't have been particularly helpful. I'm wondering how you know that.
I think just given the situation, I think what it is that like in that moment when I'm feeling frustrated, misunderstood, angry, whatever, like I jump to the solution bearer and I needed to hear a solution straight away. But actually the more therapeutic way of talking like we just have probably would have brought me more comfort, more joy. Mm-hmm. So I think it's just me recognizing that like I can't just jump straight to the solution, because often it's almost like I want any solution regardless of whether it's good or bad. I just need something now. But actually, it's just it slows down my thinking. I think that's what I'm realizing. I hope, does that kind of answer your question?
Let me just process it. So there's a part of you that just wants any solution, however helpful it may or may not be, because that would resolve something within you. But actually in the long term that I might be missing this, but that it helps resolve some discomfort in the short term. But actually, I don't think you said this, but possibly what was implied was that a solution from someone else wouldn't be a solution for you anyway, because it didn't come from you.
Yeah, I think that's right. Yeah, definitely the bit around, I'm wanting a short-term solution from you rather than kind of an honest conversation that might have given some more long-term benefits.
Yeah.
Well, mate, I thought that was great.
Yeah.
Thank you. Any final thoughts you've got around nonviolent communication, or some of your main takeaways you want to share before we wrap up?
I think it's important to highlight that speaking from... So, nonviolent communication is most frequently used for conflict resolution because... the jackal language we're all grown up with in terms of seeing people as bad and wrong, and feeling angry and shame and guilt and obligation, not recognizing our personal responsibility for our emotions. All this domination culture is very poor at resolving conflict. So nonviolent communication is often pulled in to help with that. But connecting at the feelings and needs level with one another isn't just about resolving conflicts, but it's also about celebrating life and gratitude and celebration. So for example, if I've done something in my own life that has met my own needs in a positive way, such as, I don't know, got a new job or finished a project, then I might want to communicate that to a friend and say how good it feels that I've met this need for myself, so that they can also enjoy that celebration that their friend is feeling that way. And there's a sense in which, although we've not discussed it too much, so celebrating life and celebrating needs being met and positive feelings is also a part of this. It's not just about conflict resolution.
And when sharing that with other people, you go through the same process of giving concrete examples of what they've done, not vague. You did really well there, rather than being like, I really liked the way you spoke with that person today, and what I got from that. Like giving specific, and it's really nice getting specific feedback. I think linking back to what I was saying earlier, like not getting specifics, it can feel empty and disconnected. And
so rather than saying you're good or you're fantastic, but when you did this or when you said this, I felt this way and it met my need for this. So I appreciate that and thank you. Like, but not just thank you or you're great, but like you say, the specific thing someone has said or done that has made your life more wonderful.
And it feels good to say that. It feels nice saying that to someone, giving a specific example. Like, when you did that thing, I felt this. And, you know?
It's quite daunting to share gratitude as well, though, sometimes, isn't it?
Yeah, it's not. We're not used to giving. It can feel quite vulnerable, can't it? Because you're expressing how you felt because of somebody else.
I was listening to one of his talks where he talked about sharing gratitude. He was thinking about gratitude and he wanted to share some with his father before he died, and they were out on this walk and he's like, you know, Dad, I really wanted to sincerely share some gratitude with you about, there are some things I want to tell you that you've said and done in my life and how it's made me feel and what needs I've got met from them. And his dad was like, you know, it's nothing. I know you care and all that. And he's like, oh no, Dad, it's really important to me. It would be really, it would really help me if I knew you heard the specifics. But his dad was like really uncomfortable at hearing any gratitude. I thought that was very interesting as well. When
he says a quote, doesn't he? Like, it's our light, not our darkness, that scares us the most.
It's like we find it very, because we think of people sharing gratitude as telling us we're good or implying some sort of moralistic judgment, even if it's the positive. There's still a level of like deservingness in our thinking. Like we don't, we have to, like if I said something and you felt positively about it and it met a need for you, that's just a fact. That just happened. There's nothing to do with whether I deserve for that to have happened or whether I deserve to know that happened. That's kind of a Judeo-Christian ethic that's just stuck with us about punishment and deservingness. But I can certainly relate to times where, I'm sure you can too, you know, when we used to go around performing music, occasionally people would say like, oh, when you played that song, I really connected, I really felt great, like thank you. And it's kind of uncomfortable to hear something like that.
I remember during one of your guitar solos, this doesn't have to be verbal either. It can be silent or through body language. I remember you were doing a guitar solo. We were at the Philips Arms, our first ever gig when we were 13 playing together. And remember there was a guy sat on the front row who just had his eyes closed and he looked like proper satisfied. Like your guitar solo and I guess our performance was just like really hitting the spot for him at that time, and he was just like totally immersed in it. And I think that was I felt really connected to the feelings that they were having, and there was kind of like this giving, even though we weren't looking at each other. It was interesting. I think artists often talk about that, don't they? Like the feedback they get from their audience, even if it's silent. There's some subtle things in life that we can share with each other, even if it's like, you know, a glance or a nod or a smile. It can go a long way.
I'm really pleased you raised that before we've ended this podcast, that you can do nonviolent communication silently. Like there's no need to speak. It's all about attempting to communicate from your feelings and listen to other people's feelings and needs. And like you say, that can be done. Music's a great way for that to be done. And just, you can be on the same wavelength as someone without having to say a word. And I think that's an important part of understanding that this is more of an attitude and a philosophy than it is a strategy or a formula for speaking.
Well, I think that's a beautiful way to wrap it up. I think, we've done really well. I'm really happy with that. I think there's we've gone through everything there, and some of the examples as well, and especially those ending reflections on sharing gratitude. It's I think it's an uplifting way to finish. So I'm happy to leave it there.
Yeah, me too.
Right. I just, I guess, just want to give a quick shout out to my good friend Seb over in America, who supported us to create our latest logo as well for the podcast. I know we spent a fair bit of time on that, designing that and consulting with a few friends of his, and we're doing a bit of back and forth towards the end, and we're really, really happy with it. So he's a fan of the cast, and big shout out and big thank you to you, Seb. I know we'll continue to keep in touch, and I hope you enjoy these podcasts.
When I saw that logo, I felt pleased and gratified, because it met my need for a certain aesthetic and professionalism and a sense of progress, and don't have a request. That was the feelings and needs I had.
Yeah, and it's based on a picture of me and Luke up on a hill called Ham Hill, which is just outside of the village we grew up in, and we're looking over all the neighbouring villages, and where some of your family lived as well, over Norton, and where my grandfather spent a number of years, and where I went to school growing up, and it's just a absolutely stunning view, and I think it's a place where me and Luke feel very connected and very very alive there. I feel very connected to what's alive in me when I'm looking out over that viewpoint, and I think it's been captured perfectly. So
yeah,
awesome. Well, next week or next fortnight we'll be covering Winning Body Language by Mark Bowden, which is another part of this communication body language 3-part series or 4-part series we're going through. So it's bit of be an interesting one. I watched a YouTube video on him, and he's one of those louder than life people, and he made me laugh, but he made me interested. So I'm keen to see what he's got to say in a book at an educational level. So
me too. Looking forward to seeing how we can kind of combine the ideas from other forms of communication techniques into what we've just talked about today as well.
Well, exactly. I think the way we just wrapped up with, body, not needing to use words to communicate non-violently, and using body language, will carry us over nicely. So, thanks again, mate. Really enjoying these every week, and it's nice to connect given the current situation. So.
Nice one. Cheers, mate.
See you, mate.
Have a good one.
Bye.
See you next time.
See ya.